Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man. So I went ahead and fixed my hat. I don't look like a train conductor anymore. Somebody said. So I was like, "That's funny, bro." It is kind of big. It's the full size fitted hat. But as I was saying, I am 7 1/4, and the smallest size I could get with this hat was 7 3/8. So it is a touch too big. I guess I look like a small kid in it or something. I mean, it fits pretty good. But anyways, man. So yeah, I went ahead and grabbed the final game from the U.S. Chess Championship. So I got Wesley versus Sam Sevian. And it's a really interesting game. It has a really interesting end game. The theoretical type of end game that came up in it. So it was something I've actually never come across before in my 745 videos, which is saying something, bro. So of course, for all my people that are coming from the Philippines, I would say mabuhay, magandang umaga, 5:50 a.m. I know one person that's up in the Philippines. Anyways, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat, aking makaibigan. Yeah, man, if you guys are ready to go, man, let's take a look, see what we got for this game. So we got the move D4. We got knight to F6. We got C4, E6, and a pretty, critical branching point. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can play. E3, knight C3, knight F3, G3, which is what we actually see in the game. So we do have the Catalan opening, my personal favorite. And I think this game is actually interesting because I actually just mentioned this variation in one of my previous videos because we kind of had a slightly different variation. So we do see the move D5. We got bishop to G2, all standard stuff. Pawn takes C4. And it might seem like it makes sense to, start to try to get that pawn back immediately. But something that you do want to make sure you're doing is getting castled. So we do see the move knight to F3. We're not worried about, that pawn on C4 because B5 is going to be actually pretty dangerous for black to play. So we're not going to be doing that. So we do see the move C5. We got the move castles by white, knight to C6. And then we get into the variation that I actually mentioned the other day. Pawn takes C5. We got queen taking D1, rook taking D1. Bishop taking C5, and then we do have knight B to D2. One of the many options that you can just try to grab, just make sure you're getting this pawn back. And so black, understanding that the pawn is going to be lost pretty much immediately anyway, they decide that they're going to go ahead and, strap white with a little bit of structural damage, at least if they're going to go down. Let's go down swinging, homie. So we do see the move C3, pawn takes C3, and then we do see castles by black. We got knight to B3. We got bishop back to E7. We got knight F to D4. And then we do have the move bishop to D7. Of course, white is really, really hoping for knight takes D4 and then pawn takes D4. And we have just corrected our pawn structure. Not that it's just completely winning, but I mean, this is a really nice position for white to be in. But black says, bro, I'm not even doing all that, man. I'm not helping you in any way, shape, or form. So we do see bishop to D7. We got knight taking C6, bishop taking C6, bishop taking C6, pawn taking C6. So as you guys can see, everything is pretty much equal. I mean, we do have this Sevian kettle position, for white, and that's different from black, but we do have, the same isolated pawn. So white and black are going to be trying to, see if they can make these some weaknesses. So we do see the move F3. We're just trying to restrict this knight a little bit because, I mean, the knight can start to kind of hop around. Maybe you can see some bishop to F6s coming up, and that would, possibly target that pawn. So the rook F comes to D8. We see bishop to D2, and then we do see knight to D5, which is the novelty of the game. And you will see the knight start to get kind of pushed around a little bit. We got C4, knight to B6, C5, and then knight coming down to C4, attacking this bishop. So bishop does come to F4. We got rook taking D1 with check, rook taking D1, and then we have a really interesting move, which is actually the best move in the position, and it is actually to go E5. You're basically asking white, I mean, what do you really want to do with your bishop? Do you really want to back it all the way up to C1 and redirect it like this, or you just want to get on a counterattack, which is what white is supposed to do. In this position, you see the move rook to C1. We're not worried about the bishop getting taken. We're just saying, hey, man, I'm going to take your knight if you take my bishop, and that is what we do see. Pawn takes F4, rook takes C4, and then pawn takes G3, pawn takes G3. And, I mean, you see not a lot has really changed. Interestingly enough, I mean, white doesn't really too much have a Sevian kettle position anymore. They just kind of shifted their pawn over a little bit. But We do see the rook coming over to c8. We got the move g4. And, I mean, you guys notice, okay, this pawn can't really go anywhere, right? But you do have all the rest of these pawns on light squares, and black has a dark square bishop. So you're trying to make sure that your pawns aren't targets for black to just start to pick on. So we do see the king going over to f8. We got rook over to b4, trying to see if we can penetrate on b7. We do see the move a5. We got rook to a4 because now, I mean, it pretty much looks like we're just going to get a pawn, right? Well, we do see the bishop going back to d8, and then we actually see the move king to f2. And for those of you that are wondering in this position, this is not a free pawn. You have to be very careful in this position because if you go knight takes a5, you would be looking at rook to a8, and the problem is this knight doesn't have a way to back up. Like, so if this rook was on this square, right, you could back the knight up like this, and then, you know, you're able to capture you know, the rook after the rook's exchange. But we do not have that scenario, so you can't place the knight anywhere that's going to save this rook. So you are going to pretty much, I mean, it's not like it's a guarantee for you to lose the game, but I mean, don't lose the game this way. Like, don't do that. So we do see king to f2. We got the move g6. We got f4. We got rook over to a8. You know, just making sure that we protect this pawn. You know, so I mean, white definitely has a really good position right here. They do kind of have black tied down to the protection of some of these points. You know, basically black is pretty much centered around protecting this pawn. I mean, after the move would possibly come knight to d4 at some point, you know, we do kind of have to shift the rook over, stuff like that. So you see that black is pretty much just kind of like, you know, going off of what white is doing in this position. They have to play defensively. So we do see knight coming to d4, like I mentioned. Bishop comes to e7, because if you're going to get my pawn, I'm going to get your pawn. You see that everything is pretty much focused around those c pawns, because if one of these can be removed, then, I mean, basically one side has a passed pawn, you know, a completely unobstructed passed pawn. So the rook does come to c4. We got rook over to c8. Knight goes down to b3. And, I mean, like I said before, white has a really, really nice edge. The biggest reason that they have an edge is just simply because, like, you know, they are attacking black, and black is basically having to defend. So black's moves are very, very restricted compared to white's possibilities. So we do see the move rook to a8. Rook goes back to a4. Bishop goes back to d8. And this position might look familiar to you because we have repeated positions for a second time now. So we have to be paying attention to make sure that we don't repeat it again. Because then, you know, there would just be a draw by 3-fold. So we do see the king going up to f3, making sure we break away from the position. The king goes over to e8, and then we do see the move e4. And the interesting thing in the position is this is actually a very critical moment for Wesley So, because he actually has the ability to go g5. Now, g5 might not look like a whole lot right here, but the problem is this is just making it harder and harder for black to really do anything. And they're not in a zugzwang, but they are in a situation where they don't have a lot of great moves. I mean, you know, of course, so basically what this pawn is doing is it's freezing, you know, all three of these pawns without really a good way for you to do something about it. I mean, you can't really push the pawn here because that's just going to be taken. And that's just like really, really lights out. You also can't go f6 because if you take back right here, I mean, you know, you're going to have to go like king f7 and then rook's going to come over to d4. And you can see that, like, I mean, you just have a lot of play on these two squares, you know, for white. So, I mean, it's creating, you know, situations and stuff. And you definitely don't want to go, bishop taking here. Because you're pretty much just going to be giving up the pawn. So, like, I mean, you see how it's basically black is, like, kind of on the back foot in these positions. So, like I said, we do see the move e4. We got bishop down to c7. We do see the move e5, and this is allowing the king to, you know, kind of start penetrating on the light squares. We do see the move g5. Very logical. You're trying to just undermine the pawns. We do see pawn taking g5. We got king down to d7. We do see the king coming up to f4. So, I mean, white kind of has a little bit, you know, a little something, something as far as pawns are concerned. I mean, they do have 5 pawns before, so it's not like you're absolutely winning the game, but you do kind of have to be careful the way you're playing as black. We do see king down to e6. We got king over to e4. Bishop takes e5, rook takes a5, and so now we've gotten that pawn. So we are up a pawn. I mean, this isn't the prettiest looking pawn structure ever, but I mean, it is a pawn at least, right? So the rook does go to g8. We do see rook up to a6. Rook takes g5, rook goes to c6 with check. King goes to d7, rook goes over to h6. So, you know, white and black are constantly trying to counterattack each other in these situations. We do see the bishop going back to g7. We do see rook taking h7, rook goes to g4 with check. The king goes up to d5. We do see king over to c7. We got a4. And like I said before, I mean, the position is a little bit dangerous for black. I mean, you're down a pawn. you know, there is like kind of a little bit of pinnage going on right here as far as this pawn is concerned. So, I mean, white definitely has a really strong initiative here, and it's pretty much black's game to lose, and that pretty much stays the same all the way through the rest of the game. So rook goes to g5, we check, the king goes down to c4. We see rook down to g4, we check, the king goes up to b5. We got bishop down to c3. We got rook taking f7 with check, which might look kind of strange, but there actually kind of is a method to this madness. But like I said, black has to play a very, very specific way. And there's only one king move, and that's the move king to b8. So if you move anywhere else, you're just completely just losing the game, like without a doubt. So king goes to b8. We see rook up to f8 with check. King goes back to c7. Rook goes back to f7 with check. And we are testing black to try to see if he's going to make one of these bad moves. So he doesn't. Sevian said, I'm too gangster for that, so he goes back to b8. Now we do see knight to a5. We can't repeat again because that's just a draw. You know, Wesley so in this position is actually thinking I could win this right here. So, I mean, why am I going to repeat moves and just have a draw, right? So the rook does go to b4 with check. We do have king to c6. And, you know, you can see black is kind of getting put in the box a little bit. So they have to make sure, you know, that they are not allowing themselves to get cornered. So the rook does take on a4. You got rook up to f8 with check. You got king down to a7. You got rook to f7 with check. King back to b8. Rook goes back to f8 with check. The king goes back to a7. And then we do see knight to b7, making sure we break that threefold repetition. So, you know, we're trying to get a little bit of time in the situation. We still do have a pawn, so we're not on the 50 move rule yet. We do see the rook going to a6 with check. The king going up to c7. We got bishop to d4 attacking that pawn. And then we do see the move at knight to d6. And you got to be actually very, very careful in this position because you can get mated if you are not careful. For example, if you take this pawn on c5, that's lights out, bro, because knight to b5 is checkmate. So don't do this, homie. Like, don't think I'm going to get the pawn and now everything is good. No, you're going to be losing the game. So don't do that. So we do see the move after knight to d6. We do see rook to a5, recognizing this. And now we have just kind of given our king a little bit of an escape. So we do see the move c6. We got bishop to e5. We got rook over to e8. Rook goes to d5, and then we're able to nestle down in that e6 square with the rook. We do see rook going over to c5, rook up to e7, so we are repeating again. So I get to the point in the game that I'm actually going to start going a little bit faster because, I mean, we're just kind of doing a lot of maneuvering. And so I'm just going to kind of speed it up just a little bit. So we do see rook to c5. We got rook over to g6. We got rook down to c2. Rook goes to h6, rook to c1. So you can see we're kind of like, you know, maintaining the position that we have right now. So not a whole lot is changing. We're just kind of moving things back and forth. The rook goes up to h7. We got rook down to d1. We got rook to h6. Rook goes back to c1. Rook goes back to h7. And then we do have the rook going to d1. And we have reached the point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what really, really nice move white has to play in the position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So the best way to play this position, actually, both of these players play the correct moves. But I have two guess the moves right here. The first one is king to c8, and it is discovering a check on this king. And it's not really putting, you know, white in too big of a pickle, you know, because there are two very, very good moves in a position that you can make. So we do see rook to c8 with check, and then another guess the move right here. If you want to go ahead and pause the video, and see what main move that you should play as white or black here. Go ahead and pause the video and do so. Okay, cool. So, you know, there is, you know, there's kind of king to a6. It's actually not that great. So there's really only one main move. The thing that you have to understand about this type of endgame that we gotten into, that it is actually very logical for you to give this bishop up for the sake of grabbing this pawn. Because the thing about it is a knight and a rook versus a rook by itself is actually a theoretical draw. The major reason why like one side would lose this position is just because they blunder their position. But it is very possible to draw this position. I'll show you exactly what that is. King to b6 is the absolute best move. It does, like I said, drop knight to c4 with check. So you're thinking, why would I just give my bishop away? But you do grab this pawn, and then you have knight takes e5 with check, and the king goes to b5. Like I said, we have the endgame that I was mentioning. So you have knight and rook versus a rook, right? So for black, it is possible to draw this position. Like, it's theoretically a draw. But it is really, really, really hard for black to actually draw this situation. And it has been lost many, many times by many, many different people. So this is definitely one of the hardest end games that we have to play. The major things you have to think about, you know, and I'm going to really be running through these moves. The major things you have to think about is you really, really don't want your king to be in the corner. So this black king, his whole goal is to make sure that he does not get like on the edge of the board or in the corners. So all of this whole area right here, like you have to absolutely try as hard as you can to stay away from that. So I will not actually call out these moves. I will just show the maneuvers. So like I said, stay away from the edge as if you're black's king. Absolutely do not get in the corner with your king, and check relentlessly. That's literally what you have to make sure that you're doing. And flowing through these moves, you will see this in action. So we see, you know, a check. We see the other check. We see the king going over, the rook coming over, rook to h6, knight to d4, king down. So you're kind of trying, you're moving towards the center is the most important thing, right? Okay, so we got a couple more moves, and now we got a check. And the knight is blocking. So we want to make sure that we're tying the knight down to the king, because if the knight and the rook can work together against black's king, you can actually put black in the mating net. So you have to be checking relentlessly, and you have to be trying to pin down knights as much as possible. And if you can trade rook for rook also, then you can get into a king and a knight versus a king, which as you guys know is a complete draw. So we see the check. We see the checks coming, right? We just see relentless checks. We got another pinning. So the rook comes down, and we just see this maneuvering. So you see that white is like, bro, I can't trade you rooks because I'm just going to have a knight left, and I can't win that way, right? So he avoids that for sure. We got the rook coming up, okay? Being careful. You want to be careful that you're not, leaving yourself, checkable. Like you do not want to skewer, you don't want to, X-ray through the king and get the rook. So we just see the maneuvering here. We got another check. So as you can see, as soon as white starts to kind of get in a scenario where they are, when they get into a scenario where they are starting to kind of put black in that box, you see that black is on the rim, is getting really close to this corner. So you have to start checking relentlessly and trying to get white's pieces away from that mating net. So that's why you see all these checks coming up here. Just checks all day. And you got to cover with the knight. So you see that black is doing exactly what they need to do to survive this, this. And we see this is move 99. So that's why you see me just blazing through these moves. We have this maneuvering, just continuously maneuvering back and forth. Okay, you got to check. So you see white is trying to set up that checkmate, box again, the mating net, right? And so you see like black is kind of close, but not quite there. And then we see checks again. And then now we have achieved this same pinning position that we saw before. So you see that, black is continuously doing what they need to do to make sure they weasel out of any type of checkmate scenarios. And they're not blundering anything majorly. So we do, we're backing up. We got this situation here. We are making sure that knight stays pinned. The king goes over here. And we get to this position here. Checking again. The king comes up. And we do have a draw. And this is, I think this is like 57 or 58 moves that they did in this particular situation. Because I believe 71 was when they started 50 moves. And so that would have brought us to 2 moves ago. So we are at 52 moves right now. But they called the arbiter and they went ahead and said, hey, man, we got 50 move rule. For those of you who aren't aware of it, 50 move rule is, as soon as, you have the last pawn captured on the board, there are no pawn promotions and stuff like that. You have started a 50 move rule. So since that pawn got taken on move 71, I believe, you basically had a situation where somebody has to get mated because you can't just keep making moves. Like there's no pawn movements. There's no, queening situations going on like that. Any captures. When you don't have any of that stuff present, you just basically hit the 50 move rule. And something I did want to mention that I had actually forgot about. I did get a couple of donations. I have to apologize to you guys because, I'm not really accustomed to getting donations. I mean, I've only gotten a handful of donations since almost pretty much 2 years ago. So it's not like, I'm not like a Gad Matter, so I don't get them a lot. So I do want to say I really appreciate Arnold Chan for giving that donation through. And also Ron Shaw. You guys have to forgive me, anybody who does give donations, because, there's probably, 270 countries roughly. I think that there's 207, different, currencies out there. So, it's a little bit confusing to try to understand, the percentages and then, everything goes on like that. So, Forgive me if I'm kind of lost. Plus, sometimes I check on my phone, comments, and I don't actually see that I got a donation. So, bear with me as I try to understand, as things develop going further and further. So, but I appreciate everybody very much. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan, and I'll see you guys next time.